Welcome to Tremendous Talk. We got the industry, tea, and the jokes. Actors, directors, musicians, and more. You're listening to Tremendous Talk.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tremendous Talk podcast. My name is Law, and as always,
hello, I'm Ashley.
Yes, let's go. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone. It's been a minute, but we're always happy to bring you brand new content. And today we're talking about a pretty lovely movie called The Wedding Banquet. And we've got a couple guests from it. But the first up is Andrew Ahn, the director. It was such a great conversation, too.
Yeah, it was so good. The way that he connects with his folks, and I've gotten such a pleasure to sit in on so many press days where we're talking to either the cast or the talent or anything, or even Andrew, and the way that he's approached this film, the way he's made this film, he's such a true filmmaker's filmmaker, if that makes sense. Like, he is the person you want to look up to as a role model when you're in the filmmaking world, but also like that's the person you want to work with because he creates this safe space, because he tells these stories where people feel seen and represented and heard. And it's just such a big, important deal to see movies like this. Not only AAPI, not only queer, but just the human experience and embracing the messiness of life and what life can throw at you and learning to work with the curves and the screwballs that life throws. But it's just such a truly wonderful film.
Yeah, it's all those things. And, the conversation we had with Andrew is very insightful. Like we learn about the idea of what it means to build a movie. It's not a one-man team. It's in fact like a collaboration effort. We learn about lifestyle and the idea of identity and what it means to be human, and how that comes across in this film is so authentic and feels very organic. And that's something that with those two words come up a lot in this episode, I'm pretty sure, because The Wedding Banquet, this new version 2025, is similar to the 1993 one in spirit, but it's so much more modernized and deals with like very real life issues for the queer community and Asian community today. So it's just always an honor to have such amazing talent show up on our podcast. But this film is really special, and you guys can catch The Wedding Banquet in theaters on April 18th, and we urge you to go see it.
It's got green card marriages. It's got IVF stories. It's got Subarus. It's got indigenous stories too. It's got a whole, did I say a Korean wedding? It has a whole Korean wedding in it. It's just such, there's bird watching. There's bird watching involved. If you like birds, highly recommend 10 out of 10. There is bird watching featured in it. But man, so good. April 18th. See you there.
See you there. But welcome to the Tremendous Talk podcast, Andrew Ahn.
Woohoo! I want to start off with let's talk about mushrooms. I want to ask you about, are you aware of the mushroom network and how mushrooms kind of work with each other?
Is it like kind of underground?
Yeah.
What is
like
it like
the Last of
mycelia?
Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Like everything is underground connected. It's like crazy network of things, but they're not connected. Like mushrooms kind of talk to each other, I guess. I don't know. I've done a lot of research on mushrooms, but I feel like in a weird way, that's what your directing reminds me of, right? Like there's so much going on under the surface in the way that I've gotten such a pleasure to hear about how the cast talks about working with you. You do this thing, and I think it's very rare of directors, so I just want to give you a like flowers for that really quick too. But you have this way of working with people and molding their experiences where you're not saying things out loud, but you're working under the surface in a way that connects people and draws this unit of this ensemble together in a way that like a lot of these people just met each other and just start working with each other for the first time. But this family, this unit that you've created is so natural and so familiar and so just like they've known each other literally since they were in the wombs.
Yeah, I think that my directing style is to not puppet my characters. I don't think that over controlling, your actors leads to organic performances. And so you need to involve your actors and give them that environment where they can take on some of the authorship of the character and really make them human. And so that for me is a more natural process. That's more my instinct. I know, there are certain filmmakers that tell their actors exactly where to stand and which direction to look, and that works for them. And I think that there are incredible movies that are very precisely choreographed and directed and acted in that way. That's not my instinct. It's not the kind of story that I want to tell. This film in particular, The Wedding Banquet, I really wanted these characters to feel like human beings because these are my friends, right? And I wanted to really respect and honor their humanity, their individuality, the diversity of this family. That was a top priority. And so I really adjusted, how I wanted to work with them in order to get that kind of performance.
That's so neat. Do you think you learned that kind of style of directing and that way of like interacting with different human beings and just actors and people on set from like you're not a total film student, right? Like you just kind of studied film and then you kind of grew up in like the film festival world of things. Do you think that's how you learned about it?
I think um, I learned about this through many different collaborations. I did go to film school and I had a really wonderful acting coach. Sue Ann Spoke, and I just really respect actors. And it's also this thing where like I know I'm just one brain, and I think films are better when it's a brain trust and it's many people. And so I'm really excited by the collaborative process. It makes me inspired. And so it's something that I've practiced kind of throughout my career, and I think I'll continue to practice. It's really difficult sometimes to let go of kind of control, and what you might have in your mind initially can really stay with you, and to be able to adjust that a little, to crack that open. um it's something that you have to actively work on. But for me it's more fun. Like I hate being alone in the creative process. I think it breeds a lot of anxiety in me. When all the pressure is on me, I don't think it's as much fun.
I mean, we've said it, well, we say it all the time on this podcast, like filmmaking's a team sport, right? And so it's
Yeah.
always going to be whatever you have in mind will always be bolstered by the people around you. But obviously there is an original movie of this, Ang Lee's Wedding Banquet. And then I was just wondering, in the pitching process or even in the writing process for you, what did you distinctly know that you wanted to do differently this time around in terms of taking this kind of the story and molding it into something that is more Andrew? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. I wanted something to feel more me, and I think that that's what really great art does, right? Is that it inspires you, and it triggers, your own emotions and feelings and insights. And, watching The Wedding Banquet, as an adult, um, I, I was thinking so much about, conversations that I had with my boyfriend about um, getting married and about parenthood. Um, and so I knew that those elements, I wanted to be a part of this film. I love the Ang Lee film, and I have so much respect for it. I've talked about this a lot. It's the first gay film I ever saw in my life, and so I I didn't want to yeah, I didn't want to mess it up, and I felt like the most authentic way I could make this movie was to, um, show how it inspired me. Obviously there are some other key differences, one being that, it's now a Korean wedding.
Mm.
And I mean, that's just because I'm Korean, right? It's just a very simple choice. Um, uh, and so I hope that people really understand that this is a different movie that has you know, new questions that it's posing, but at the same time, really borrows the, philosophy and, storytelling priorities of the original film, that humanity, that we've been talking about. It's so clear in Ang Lee's movie, and I wanted to keep that for ours.
That humanity, I wanted to ask you about that too, because you do such a wonderful job of creating these really complex, messy characters, right? And now we're in this era of embracing messy Asian stories and messy queer stories and what that looks like. But how did you, it's so easy to like go down a rabbit hole of writing too messy or go down a rabbit hole of writing somebody that's too perfect on character. Like you did it so balanced and so well. I read in the press notes that one of the kid, Chris, he understands what his boyfriend is going through because he's a bird watcher, because he watches these birds, and so he sees what this experience is for him. I don't know. It's just, how did you balance that in your stories between the messiness of the human experience?
I really trusted my actors, Of course, there's so much work that we did in the screenplay, working with co-writer James Schamus. It's so funny. I remember he was the one that wanted to make Chris a birder, and I was
A
like,
birder? Is that what they're called? A
yeah,
birder?
yeah, they're called birders, yeah.
I love
And
that.
I remember thinking, I was like, is that a gay thing? Like, are gay people interested in birding? And then I thought about my friends, and I was like, oh no, yeah, they really are, And so, there's a lot of texture, that we wrote into the screenplay, but it was also about collaborating with our actors, and Lily Gladstone, the that character originally wasn't named Lee. She was named Liz, and Lily Gladstone was like, "Oh, I don't want to play a lesbian named Liz. It's too on the nose," which I thought was funny. And because we set the film in Seattle, she had an idea. Lily said, "What if?" the character's name is Lee, which would be short for Angeline. And Angeline is the name of Chief Seattle's daughter, the Duwamish chief that Seattle is named after. Um, and that brought in this element of, like home and stewardship, that her family belongs there. Um, and that really deepened the character, in the film, and personalized it for Lily. Um, like with Bowen, we talked so much about, um, you know, kind of the burden of choice, now, like after decades of progress, that queer people have more options than we've had in the past, and how that might be kind of scary, actually, like now that we can get married, like, do we have to? Do we want to? And I find that really relatable, and I think that, Chris was on the page an amalgamation of, friends of mine, and so in casting, I was like, I should cast a friend, and so I cast Bowen. And so I think all of these conversations, all of these um, uh, uh, kind of ideas and inspirations, like I wanted to roll into the film. I mean, Yoon Jung, who's so incredible as Min's grandmother in the film, it was Yoon Jung's idea to play grandmother. The film, the script originally had Min's grandmother as Min's mother, and
Mhm.
Yoon Jung was very humble, and she said, I feel a little old playing a mother of this character. And then when we talked about grandma and the different dynamics of it, that relationship between grandparent and grandchild, I could tell she got really excited, and that really inspired me. And as a director, when you feel that feeling from your actor, from yourself, you follow it.
Totally. You know, in our conversation, we spoke to Kelly yesterday, and she was talking about like we talked about how authentic all the characters felt, and it seemed to just come from a place of like, oh, because you guys were actually just friends, you know, and you're actually queer, and so you could speak to the experience and bring that into the film. But it did make me curious, even while I was watching it, and we asked this to her too. But was the idea of avoiding stereotypes or like shedding a negative light on your communities, whether that's the AAPI space or the queer space, was that ever a conversation for you, or you just had like full trust and faith that you would nail like the tone of all that?
Yeah, I think if you really trust the process,
Mhm.
and you really trust in your actors, that humanity kind of follows. You know, stereotypes. It is tricky. You know, I mean, it's funny. Like Lee and Angela in the film drive a Subaru. You know, like we leaned into it sometimes. But um, like we, uh, I think it's really important to um, just like respect the characters and not try and manipulate them or try and force them to do anything that they normally wouldn't, And so, one example is, when Min's grandmother shows up.
Mhm.
I remember in the writing process, we had a kind of different story. And James Seamus was like, oh no, like this woman is too smart. Like, why are we doing it this way? Like, why are we writing it this way? Like, this woman's too smart.
Mhm.
And so that led to, like a fun twist in the expectation of the film, right? And so um, I think it's only through that immense respect for who these people are and an understanding of who they are, that allows the filmmaking to feel like fresh and human and you know, kind of yeah, just as authentic and organic as possible.
Mhm. Mission
Wow,
accomplished for sure.
that's
Felt
beautiful.
very.
I mean, and speaking of trusting this process and respecting the folks that you're working with, when you have Yoon and Joan in a room together, filming the dinner scene together, do you just like step back and like let the magic happen, or how do you kind of work through working with these two legendary actors?
No, it was the honor of a lifetime to direct Joan and Yoon Jung in that scene, to just let these two legends like do their thing. It's so interesting, right? To have these incredible actors, a legend of Chinese cinema and a legend of Korean cinema. Like it it could only be in a film like The Wedding Banquet, this weird cross-cultural film that you could see them in a movie together. Um, uh, of course, there's always a little bit of work that a director does in scenes, just to kind of shape or emphasize, and in that scene in particular, just trying to nail the kind of balance between the humor and the pathos, right? The drama. Because it's a difficult moment, but I think like they needed to laugh. They needed to have some sort of release connection, and so just that balance was something that we, worked on, got options for, and then of course shaped in the edit. Um, but you know, I definitely had a light touch. Like you don't need to do much to make, these icons be incredible. Like, they're bringing so much experience, they're bringing so much of themselves. Um, I that was kind of towards the end of the shoot, I think they were really um in the pocket for their characters. And I remember people on set at Video Village just like taking photos of the screen because when do you get to see two people like this get to do work? And so I was uh, extremely honored to work with them.
There's because we're talking about Yoon, there's a line that she has. Min's grandmother talks about the garment that Min made, and she said
Yeah.
something along the lines of like all these small pieces of yourself form something more meaningful when they're stitched together. And so I'm curious for your own journey, whether it's in this industry or just as a human, what are like kind of like the small pieces or instances that really helped shape who you are to create a more meaningful life as in this, especially in this industry where it's so hard to navigate sometimes.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that scene. It's one of my favorites, and was really inspired by, um, the work of the artist that we worked with, Julia Kwan,
Mm.
utilizing this, very traditional Korean technique, poljagi, and I think I I think sometimes it's very overwhelming to think of the big picture, like, oh God, I have to make a movie, like a movie is like such a big thing. And, you don't realize that you can do it bit by bit. You can take it, day by day, kind of aspect by aspect, um, and you don't have to do it alone. And so I think for me in my life, as a filmmaker, um, you know, each little piece is, a person,
Mm.
someone that I'm interacting with, someone that I'm witnessing, someone that I'm, you know, um, getting to meet. I think, uh, you know, it's really hard to do this alone. Any sort of art. And so I really value being a part of, so many robust communities. And and it's really shaped who I am. It's really only through that interaction with other people that I get to understand like my own values, my own priorities, my own interests, um, and so I really lean on that kind of social aspect. Of course, people drive me crazy, and there are some people that I do not want to be part of my quilt, like I
Yeah.
don't want them there. Um, but even those interactions are valuable because then like who does not jive with you and who does, like who you can, avoid or protect yourself from in the future. Um, so yeah, it's just about it's about community.
I love that. And I wanted to share too. And speaking of community, there's this really cool thing that happens in the room when people have been able to watch your film or, however they view it. You create this like safe space in a time where, a lot of spaces actually don't feel very safe. But when you walk into the theater, you know the audience that you're going to be around. You know that there's something that everybody shares in common with each other. There's a feeling of like belonging and acceptance that you talk about in the film that people automatically feel when they walk into this room to watch your movie. Was that was that creating a safe space something intentional that you did throughout the creation of the movie, or did you like notice it when you watched it first at Sundance, or how's it been for you?
Yeah, I think every film I make, I want it to be, um, an opportunity for an audience to be vulnerable. It's a little bit why I don't think I could make a horror film because I don't want to scare my audience. Like I don't want them to like feel attacked, I want them to open up to the film actually, because I think it's when you open up to artwork that you can heal, you can reassess, you can grow, you can't do those things when you have walls up, and so um, that's just how I think about the value of art, in society. And so with the wedding banquet, I wanted us, to make a film that would allow people to be vulnerable and bare their hearts to the screen because these characters are bearing their hearts to the audience. There's an agreement. And, the cast, Bowen, Lily, Kelly, Keechan, Joan, YJ, like they really put themselves out there in such a beautiful, vulnerable way. I hope that it inspires a vulnerability. Um, and so, I don't know if um, when I started writing, knew that this was going to be a theatrical film, and actually, this is the first time in my career where I've had, kind of a proper theatrical. Um, and so, I'm really excited for audiences to get to see it with other people, and bring friends, and even just strangers that, yeah, like share the same interest in a story like this. Um, that together you can feel a sense of solidarity and a desire to um, celebrate family. Um, that feels really exciting and fulfilling. I'm definitely really nervous, because who knows, like how many people are going to go out to see something like this. But my hope is that people really value the vibe of the story and just love this family. I hope it becomes people's comfort watch, that you watch the film and really get a sense of just like, okay, like things will be okay in this world. Uh but yeah, I think it's very meta for me, that it's a film about family and a film about community, and I hope that when it goes out there, it helps build those things.
That's exactly how it feels. I remember when I watched it, I was like, this is a comfort movie. This makes me feel okay. Like the world will be good. And that's kind of what you're creating too. And I just realized kind of the process of filmmaking is like IVF, right? Like there's so many steps you have to take. There's this
Yeah,
like journey to it, right? And then you birth out a baby at the end. Like this
yeah,
film is your baby. But
yeah.
in there's a lot of firsts in this, and the original Wedding Banquet being your first gay film that you watched, you're one redefining the tableau of a traditional family and what that looks like for people. Two, you're offering one of, I think, the first examples that I have personally ever seen of not only just a queer couple going through IVF, but a couple in general going through IVF and an IVF story, but also you're creating a story where people can see their family's acceptance of them in a way that I don't think has been done before, especially in the Korean communities. Folks who are queer in the Korean communities, I think that's one of the first examples that we've seen of a grandmother coming and saying, I love you for who you are. Let me support you in this journey. With all of those firsts, are you, how does it feel to open that door for other people, like people have opened the door for you in that kind of sense?
I'm really proud to be part of, a legacy of filmmakers and community organizers who have given me the spaces and the artwork to feel proud of who I am. And so, um, I just want to amplify that. I I think sometimes it can be really hard to find those examples, especially if you don't necessarily like live in LA or New York. And so, um, with this opportunity, with this platform of this movie, like, let me show the kind of radical love that, you know, Asian Americans and queer people can feel for each other. Um, uh, you know, I grew out of that, legacy of people and, of art and hope to continue it. And, I'm so excited for more people to like tell queer and Asian stories. I I want there to be more of us. I want us to disagree. I want us to bicker. I want us to be competitive, I want us to have fun. I want us to support each other. Like I just want more of us. I think that'd be awesome. And so, um, that for me is yeah, I'm a point in the history of our communities, and yeah, just excited to see what happens.
I mean, it's a phenomenal film. I told Ash like I cried multiple times, and I just wasn't anticipating that. Like there were certain lines that were delivered in just the right way that I cracked, and there were fun moments too that resonated with me as like someone in the industry, like the Asian gala, and like all of that happening, and then seeing that same performer at a different gala or a different event. That was so
Yeah.
funny to me because it's like we do have like a very tight knit community, especially in LA. And so you see the same faces going around. Felt like a little shout out to me, but but all that to say, at the end of our podcast, we always like to pass the mic over. You've already imparted so much wisdom and so many wonderful little sound bites for us, but we'd love to give you an opportunity on our small platform to just share what you want to share. If there's something you want to promote or advice you'd like to give, we'd love to hear what more you can offer the Tremendous Talk audience.
I didn't know this was coming, and so let me think about it. I mean, I'll say one thing obviously to promote is the wedding banquet, and then the film comes out April 18th, and I'm excited for audiences to get to see it. I think it's a great family film. I think it's a great date night movie. And so please check it out. Let people know about it. And then any sort of words of wisdom or advice or anything like that. I mean, I'll say, if you're an artist, really learn to listen to yourself and, understand what you're interested in. I think there's so many people telling us what we should be interested in, and they're telling us like what we should do. And ultimately, if you want to create work that feels compelling and is inspiring to you, it's got to come from your own interest. And so really learn how to listen to yourself and then involve as many brilliant people in that process to make it as possible, especially in filmmaking. It takes a village. It takes a good amount of money, and embrace the collaborative process.
Wow, that's awesome. What a great way to wrap this up. Thank you so much for your time, Andrew. That was such a lovely way to end this. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, thank
Cool,
you.
thank you.
The Tremendous Talk podcast is produced by Lawrence Sharma, Ashley Rapuano Sanchez, Gabriela David, Joseph Garalde, and Jeremiah Abraham in collaboration with Tremendous. The Tremendous Talk podcast jingle is by Jared Sanchez and Ashley Rapuano Sanchez, produced at Hamsterdam Records.